even in the face of this kind of disaster, this tragedy and destruction, we still see, whiteness rearing its ugly head. They were doing things like they wouldn't let Africans on the train to go to the Poland border. They wouldn't let them on the train, and they were doing something like, first it was supposed to be all women, children, and then it turned to women, children, and white men. And I was wondering, and this would made me look into it, Kaya, when I heard it say women, children, and white men, I was like, why would they say that? Right? Like, why would that be the order? And then I saw women, children, white men. I said, oh, that must mean there's some Black folks who's not able to get on if that's what it was. So Black children and Black women weren't allowed on with the women and children part. So again, that shows you they're treating, Black folks, African folks as subhuman out there. And then when they finally did start letting some on, they were letting them on like for every 100 Ukrainians, they would let 2 Africans on. They literally got on and dragged off some college students who were on like, no, we have to let more real Ukrainians go before we can let you go. So that's the first part of it. And the first piece. And then there's a second piece. When they finally do make it to the Poland border, they're having problems getting across the border.
If you want to see good news, you don't see on regular TV. From another perspective, something relative to your needs. And we gonna have deep subjects, and we gonna turn the lens. And there's no topic we won't skip. So please don't miss weekly, yeah. Tune in weekly to check in, weekly check in, weekly check in, weekly check in. Tune in to weekly, tune in, check in, weekly check in.
What up, wherever you are in the universe? My name is Kaya Niambi Shivers, and once again, I am here with Dame Crawford, who is a contributor to Arc Republic News and Weekly Check-In, and as we call it, the West Coast Connect. What up, Dame?
What's going on?
All is well. We have much to talk about. In Europe, the block is hot, as they say.
What?
The block is hot. I've been talking about Ukraine and Russia with Sharice Nelson, who, usually, in the past, all three of us would talk, but we haven't been able to connect in that way. But you brought up some very important information just to, Ukraine and Russia. Well, Russia waged war on Ukraine, has invaded Ukraine last week, and has sent multiple different strikes to the country. And now the countries are in a full-scale war. Well, there's been quite disturbing information coming out of this war on many different fronts. But Dame, you brought me this information. What's up?
Yeah. So I don't know if you know, but there's probably about 20,000, a population of 20,000 Africans across the Ukraine. Probably, I think like 60% of them are students who were stuck in the Ukraine during this invasion. They were trying to flee like everyone else. And even in the face of this kind of disaster, this tragedy and destruction, we still see, whiteness rearing its ugly head. They were doing things like they wouldn't let Africans on the train to go to the Poland border. They wouldn't let them on the train, and they were doing something like, first it was supposed to be all women, children, and then it turned to women, children, and white men. And I was wondering, and this would made me look into it, Kaya, when I heard it say women, children, and white men, I was like, why would they say that? Right? Like, why would that be the order? And then I saw women, children, white men. I said, oh, that must mean there's some Black folks who's not able to get on if that's what it was. So Black children and Black women weren't allowed on with the women and children part. So again, that shows you they're treating, Black folks, African folks as subhuman out there. And then when they finally did start letting some on, they were letting them on like for every 100 Ukrainians, they would let 2 Africans on. They literally got on and dragged off some college students who were on like, no, we have to let more real Ukrainians go before we can let you go. So that's the first part of it, and the first piece. And then there's a second piece. When they finally do make it to the Poland border, they're having problems getting across the border. So when they finally do make it to the Poland border, they're not looking at them as refugees as they are the rest of the Ukrainians. When they get to the border, they're saying they're seeking asylum, which brings a whole bunch of different hurdles if you're seen as an asylum seeker as opposed to a refugee. So that's what's going on down there. But the last report that I've gotten is I want to say the prime minister spoke to someone in the Ukraine, and they're supposed to be finally letting the people, the Africans, start to get on the train.
Right. The Nigerian embassy.
There you go.
The Nigerian embassy has spoken up to officials in Ukraine, and they already have started to make arrangements in transportation for Africans, the African students. And it's not just African students. It's Indian students. It's Brazilian students.
It's brown folks.
It's brown and black folks.
Yeah.
I'm not surprised. Living in Italy for 2 years, I bumped into somebody, and they had already started giving out what I call the jigger for the Chuck E. Cheese, as you know what I'm saying, because you can't say it, your stuff will get flagged. And they said that they were only giving, excuse me, those corrective measures out to Italians, and that immigrants were not on the list. I am not surprised. When I spoke to, it's sad. Let me just say that it's an irony that people have been calling this a humanitarian crisis when people are acting, or the order of the day is inhumanity in this, right? So, and there have been I cannot pull her name, but this woman is she's like on a special envoy for the WHO, World Health Organization, and she tweeted out that it was going on, and she said that she spoke with the Poland ambassador. Her name is Ayo. I got it. I don't know her name. Ayo Abi. I did not pull her name before here, but she said that she had spoke to the Poland ambassador. Part of so the overall question is that I would like to know is why weren't these people being evacuated prior to? That's one. And then secondly, Eastern Europe, China, Russia has become over the course of years, a migration stop for Africans. And during the, when the world shut down, there was a lot of reports coming out, and even students I know were talking about the ill treatment, and particularly against Africans in China. So there needs to be a very interesting conversation that needs to be had. But it's a very ironic issue as bombs are coming down. And
they still have the time to find some racism.
They still had a time to be racist.
Yeah, this
is really interesting. Yeah. And I'm not saying that in a academic way. I'm saying it, to hold back the cuss words that want to.
Well, yeah, because especially as you see, you look out in the ether of the internet, and you see Black folks really trying to be allies and really saying, this is a very inhumane what they're doing to the Ukraine, and we're empathetic people. So when you see the way we're trying to get behind them and back them, and then you see, oh, even in this, there's still time to be racist towards us. It's very disheartening, and it makes you take a step back and really just try to reassess what's happening and what's going on.
Often people say that, I've heard this a lot of times, this is like an ongoing thesis that Europe does not carry the same type of racism that the US carries. And I often push back on that. The idea of a color-coded system comes out of Europe, right? Mm-hmm. It comes with ethnic tribes and affiliations that then roll out of Europe, migrate with the immigrants to the United States. And then there's this other kind of coding system, right? Which places, goes from ethnic groups to this, skin complexion. Yep. In order to, but this is this to me is the evidence that is needed to show how white supremacy is a global issue.
And not an American issue only.
And not an American issue. Because when I was in Italy and I would talk about the racism I experienced, of, that's American. That's not, no, we don't do that. We don't, that's against the law. It's against the law in the United States too, but it's still, going. Yeah. So we'll keep our eyes on that. But what the reports have said thus far is that Russia has put on high alert in terms of the war. They put on high alert their nuclear bombs. Right? Yeah. So I don't know if these sanctions are going to be effective. I mean, there's so much. So let me just say this. This is not a clean cut one side against the other. There's a lot of complications that are going on.
Yeah, it's a lot of complications. There's a lot of moving parts. And I'm glad you brought that up, because everybody hears sanctions and think that the U.S. can just basically cut off the water, as people have been saying, oh, they're going to cut off Russia's water. You really can't, right? Because Russia is one of the largest exporters of oil and nickel and palladium. So nickel, metals, and food are the things that they're some of the biggest exporters of. So they're current energy, food, nickel, palladium, and fertilizer. So you think if U.S. cuts that off, it's almost like now you cut off your nose to spite your face, because it's going to hurt the U.S. about as much as it's going to hurt Russia. And Russia is even kind of now benefiting from the sanctions, if you don't know, because with the sanctions, the stock market is going crazy.
Very volatile.
With the stock market going crazy, gold is up about 120%. Who has a plethora of gold? Russia. So, and now oil is at $100 a barrel at the market. So if oil is at $100 a barrel at the market, when those sanctions are released or when they can't take it anymore, who's going to benefit off of that inflation? Russia.
And, I was looking at what the UN Security Council, United Nations, I don't know what the update is, but I read yesterday that was a couple of days ago, there wasn't a unanimous decision for the UN. I don't know if it's changed, but to create a resolution totally, it's not sanctioning, but saying that what Russia is doing is wrong. And so that is part of what it is you're talking about, because when Putin said there's going to be consequences, they're definitely going to be complicated. But I can't even talk consequences. We haven't even gotten into the fact that Russia is one of the number one places in the world that is proficient in hacking. Proficient in hacking and the digital war,
So you think about it, not only proficient in hacking, they're proficient in hacking the digital war, but they're also proficient in targeting Black folks with disinformation. So they can affect us in so many ways, as they did with the elections. They can affect us with the disinformation about this war. You know what I'm saying? Like, because you even see a lot of Black folks are now like, this is why we need Trump, because Putin would have never did this if Trump was in office.
Well, that's because Trump was
that's his boy.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's your boy. Yeah. Of course you ain't gonna do it when your boy's in office, but because of, I think
they got P-tapes on each other.
Right. But because of the hacking and the disinformation that we were fed, you have some people leaning towards that narrative. You understand what I'm saying?
I would say so United States does a whole bunch of disinformation in other parts.
Oh, 100%.
Right? So that's just a part of that is a part of government
control tactics,
hegemonic, keeping the order, the establishment. It's been going on. It's something that's going on. It's well documented. It's well documented against organizations and entities that challenge systems of power. Thank you so much for tuning in to Arc Republic. If you like what you see and you like what you hear, you can actually keep this mothership going. How? You can make a tax-deductible donation in several ways. One, Cash App us at Arc Republic Media.
And you can also go on our website, arcrepublic.com/donate. As well, you can also donate to our fiscal sponsor and our sister organization at Black Farmers Index, that is Cash App, or also go onto their website, blackfarmersindex.com. We are two Black women-owned media organizations who share our profits so folk can thrive.
Russia is proficient in that cyber warfare.
Yeah.
And what we were saying, what I was saying is, in addition to Russia's tactics in terms of manipulating how the information flows, you also have, this is within a digital system that is already racist.
Yes.
See, we have to contextualize that. Facebook, there were issues with Facebook. A lot of activists were saying, how here we are advocating for Black people to remain alive and not be, taken out by the police, but you have a whole bunch of white supremacists, banging and calling for all this stuff, and they're not, and nothing is done. Their Facebook pages are still up. So,
and if Black folks say the smallest things, we're getting put in Facebook jail for 30 days.
Oh, you've gotten in Facebook jail a couple of times, haven't you?
What? Yeah, I got a few other pages, to help me be able to keep going.
Right. So you have all of this going on, and these very clear racist, racialized algorithms and structures embedded in the blueprint of the digital landscape already. So this is what makes it even more an issue. However, now, this is going to be interesting because Russia is coming out with some really kind of some accusations about a whole bunch of things. From one being called has called, is it the U.S. Nazis or?
I mean, can we just talk about how gangster Putin has been though with the way he's been moving?
Yeah, come on.
Okay, can we just talk about how gangster because he's going against all his top advisors. They said all his top advisors ain't with it, which could come back to bite him in the ass. When they try to go in there and invade him, when they go in there and try to get him. But they say he's and the way he said, Kaya, if y'all come at me, it's going to be some serious issues and repercussions.
There's some consequences and repercussions.
You feel like he knows something and he got something. He's too bold and everybody's dancing around it a little too lightly. So I feel like he got a hold of something and he knows it. And that's why he's moving the way he is. Honestly.
And I really would like to know what type of information or resources were exchanged under the Trump administration. There's also been, people talking about exactly maybe perhaps there needs to be a revisit of even, when Hunter Biden was in Ukraine and like what really happened. There's just a lot.
Like you said, there's a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of moving parts because you ain't heard Biden talking reckless. You haven't heard even NATO is stepping lightly in the regards they talk to because they're like, well, let's just try some sanctions first before we put the military into it. Let's just try to do some heavier sanctions next. You know what I'm saying? So I feel like, of course, as we always know, there's pieces to the puzzle that we don't know right now. And what they're letting the world know is not the main thing. The main thing that's really going on behind the scenes, the main reason he's really invading Ukraine, and the biggest part, the main reason he feels emboldened to be able to do what he's doing, because there's a reason. And I'm sure we'll find out soon enough. But right now, like I said, I'm watching the way he's moving, watching the way NATO's moving, watching the way America's moving. And it's very interesting how bold and empowered he is. And I don't think it's coincident that he became this bold and empowered on the heels of a Trump presidency.
Right. Yeah. And as well, I mean,
the Biden son scandal as well.
Right. On top of the fact that he comes into power on this oligarchy, on this structure in which few families in Russia hold power and resources. So a lot of people don't understand. Most Russians are working class or poor. Most Russian people don't have it like that. And most of Russia is like that. However, what happened in the unfolding of when the Soviet becomes Russia is You want to talk about the elite of the elite. And so this is what these sanctions are about. These sanctions are supposed to, freeze the accounts of these very, very uber rich people who are tied into Putin. So, and what we know about rich people, borders do not stop conversations, business, marriages, so on and so forth. So we don't know what the tentacles are in terms of what the reach of Putin is in the oligarchs.
Right.
Yeah. So this is going to be really interesting, and we must keep our eye on it. It's not about how, but we must keep our eye on this, because things can spill out, and as I said before, incidents such as this have affects the world. There are ripple effects to it.
Well, think about this. Not even just ripple effects on the world. When incidents happen like this, most times it affects us, the little people. It affects us because you think about the sanctions on Russia. When the gas prices go up, that's not going to hurt rich folks. When the gas prices go up, that hurts the people who pay a higher percentage of their paycheck to get to and from work. You know what I mean? Just mathematically and economically. When you talk about the groceries going up, like I think they said bacon is already up 18% and peanut butter is up 15. That may not seem like a big thing, but to a family that's struggling to get by, and you want to try to stretch that bacon, you want to try to stretch that peanut butter to make food for your kids for lunch. That's a big deal. That's a big thing, and we are the ones who get affected. When they talk about jet fuel, if you're rich and you got a jet fuel prices don't affect you, but jet fuel affects somebody who's trying to buy a ticket on an airline who's now going to raise all their prices because the price of jet fuel has went up. It's going to affect us. You understand what I'm saying? So these are the things to look at in regards to, like you said, context to how it's going to affect us here in the States. Because I don't know if you noticed, but even before the invasion of the Ukraine, inflation was up about 40%. So it's likely to go up more. So can you imagine inflation going up to between 45 and 50%? That's kind of insane.
Yeah, and that's what we face over here. It's like a triad. We have inflation. We have what was it? I wrote it down. The triad that we are facing. I'm trying to get it all together. But inflation. Well, let me just comment on inflation. USDA, so the Harris-Biden administration is now calling for farmers to begin to prepare for a new distribution plan, right? Because a lot of people we produce a lot of food, but a lot of food is also imported. So the Biden administration is now calling, I can confirm this because I even me working with Black farmers, is now trying to create very quickly some type of regional or local distribution system of food and growers. So there's a lot that's going on. There's a lot that's going on, and perhaps maybe these measured movements against Russia are because if you too froggy, you jump too hard. You know what I'm saying? You might not hit your target, whatever that is. But
well, even in regards to farmers, if you're talking about Russia is one of the biggest exporters of fertilizer, that's going to hit American farmers, which again,
it already is. Fertilizer is up 40%, and a lot of Black farmers have been reporting to Black Farmers Index that they cannot grow their food because they don't have fertilizer. They cannot afford it.
So this is what I mean when it comes to the tentacles and how far the reach is, and how just dropping these sanctions isn't just a simple fix, and it's not a simple play to like, oh, we're just going to drop the sanctions, cut them off, and then they'll be against it because they lose. We're going to lose a lot as well, and it's going to hurt us. So I'm glad you brought that up about the farmers.
The farmers. And then another thing I was reading is in terms of, where Ukraine is, where Russia is. Prior to, there were some conversations that were had. One is that U.S. officials flew to Yemen to talk about, because right now Yemen, there is a war that's going on there, but Yemen is close to Abu Dhabi and what is it, the United Arab Emirates. So which is not, if you look at the map, is not too far from the conflict.
Right.
So part of this is that where are you positioned in order to, if it gets more aggressive, because the fact that Russia, Ukraine, the four sides of Ukraine are covered Russia doesn't make this very easy. But there's a lot and there's so much information, and already I would say within the first 24 hours, there was already, I don't know if it's necessarily disclaimers, but all of these ways in which that you can filter through a lot of the information. So this is part of, they call it the information war. I was telling, Sharice was saying that's as propaganda. So this is part of the issue, right? Is that even news outlets were showing footage and come find out of bombing, but the bombings were of another country some years ago. So there's so much there in media studies. There's this idea that when you get so much information, and there's a lot of disinformation or misinformation that is interwoven into the information that you need, you lose your ability to decipher what is legitimate and what is not legitimate. That has happened to me too. I've had to pull down a couple of things like, whoa, that wasn't right,
Right.
And it's come from quote unquote sources we think are legitimate.
100%.
So so we in the United States have got to get ready and prepare for inflation, more localized travel. I mean, I don't know. We're still working on what that looks like. Hold your coins, grow your food, and save some seeds.
There it is.
So I'm sorry. I know this was long-winded. We're still trying to figure this out in terms of how do we navigate this too at Arc Republic. But a lot of people are asking us, like, what does this mean for me as somebody who's in Chicago, in LA, So, all right, so let's move forward. Thank you for that.